Investing in property can be stressful and overwhelming, especially if you're new to the game. There are so many laws and intricate details, it means it's easy to make a mistake. But if you can manage to get your head around the process and make the right investment, it can be extremely rewarding and sometimes even life-changing. So to help you get started, we've broken down the investment process into 7 really simple steps, so you know exactly what to do, when to do it, and where to find the information you need. If you were going on holiday, the first question you probably ask yourself is, how much do I have to spend? Because that will determine whether you have a week in the Bahamas or a weekend in Sunderland. No offense, Sunderland. And property investment isn't that different. The first thing you'll need to think about is, how much money do you have? That can mean money sitting in your savings accounts, other assets that you might want to sell to raise cash, and any equity you might want to pull out of your home. So to keep things simple, let's say you have £100,000. The quick shortcut to find out your property budget is to multiply that by 3. So we multiply 100,000 by 3 to get £300,000. Why is 3 the magic number? Because you can typically secure a mortgage for up to 75% of this amount. Think of the property value being split into 4 buckets. You provide 1, and the bank provides the other 3. This would mean that you could multiply your cash by 4, but there will always be stamp duty, purchase costs, and maybe some repairs to factor in, which will also need to come from your own cash. That means in our example, you'd be putting in £75,000, taking out a mortgage of £225,000, so your total buying power would be £300,000. Multiplying your cash by 3 is only a rough rule of thumb, but it is a handy shortcut. But cash isn't all you need to invest. There are 2 other elements you need to consider which get overlooked by new investors all too often. So, do you have any skills? For example, if you're handy with a hammer, know how to re-roof a house, or can install a new boiler, these skills might help you with renovations. Or you might be hopeless at DIY, like me, but have strong analytical or negotiation skills. And importantly, do you have time? If you've got a 9-to-5 job, you just won't be able to spend months on end doing extensive renovations. Even if you outsource, you still have to be on site sometimes to supervise, or things will go wrong. Do you frequently travel abroad for months on end? If you do, then lucky you. But renting out a house by the room might not suit you, because you need to constantly be finding new tenants because people move in and out more often. Cash, skills, and time are the 3 attributes that you'll be bringing to the table as an investor. You won't be strong on all 3 of them, and that's fine. The strategy you set will aim to maximize your strengths and compensate for your weaknesses, and we'll be coming to that soon. But first, there's something else to consider. So, back to our holiday. Before you book anything, you also need to know what you're looking for and why you're going. Is this meant to be a high adrenaline weekend with friends, or a relaxing fortnight with the family? Whatever it is, you need to have a clear set of criteria, or you're not going to end up satisfied. And the same is true for property investing. You need to know why you're investing, because it'll determine the type of investment you choose. For example, do you want to make a career move? If you're desperate to get out of a job that you don't like, you'll need to make a lot of money fast. If that's the case, you might consider something called property flipping. This is where you buy a house, renovate it, and then sell it at a profit. This, if it goes well, lets you generate lumps of cash every time you sell, which you can then either put into your next investment or use to replace the income from your 9-to-5 job. Alternatively, do you want some passive income? If you want a steady extra income each month, you might opt to buy property to rent out, and the type of property matters. To maximize your income, you might consider going for cheaper houses that generate high rents as a proportion of their purchase price. But be careful. Cheap properties tend to be in less desirable areas, which may limit their growth in value over time. Or do you want a pension? Then you'll still buy and rent out, but higher quality properties in upscale areas might be your best bet. These might offer a lower rental return, but they have the potential to give you the biggest growth in value in the long run. Step 3 is about where you invest, and it's a decision that really matters. It's no secret that location is important when it comes to property investment. So, how do you choose? Maybe you've got friends who bought in certain areas before and recommend them. Or maybe you watched our previous video about upcoming hotspots in the UK. But even if you have a few locations in mind, that is just the start of your research. Let's say you're looking at Manchester as a potential location, and you've zeroed in on the central M2 postcode. Well, first you need to know if it's within your budget. So go to a website like home.co.uk and look at property prices for this area. When you put in a postcode, you'll see the number of houses for sale and the average asking price, which in this case is around £300,000, which fits your budget perfectly. Then you need to know what return you might be able to get. Looking on the same site for the M2 postcode, you can see it's about £2,000 a month, which translates to £24,000 per year. So how does this compare to other investments you could make? Well, there's an easy calculation for that. Divide the annual rent by the value of the house, then multiply that by 100. In this case, 24,000 divided by 300,000 times 100 is 8%. This is also known as your gross yield percentage. The higher this number, the better. Of course, this doesn't take account of your costs. It's just a rough calculation you can use to compare the potential returns of one area broadly to another. And even when it comes to location, this is just a rough first pass. You'll want to get more granular. So the way to do that is to go to Rightmove and go into the map view. You can then hover over different properties, building up a pattern of where properties shift from cheaper to more expensive and from less to more desirable. Every area has these invisible boundaries where nice areas become not so nice areas, and quickly glancing at prices like this is a good way to start developing that field. The next level is to go into Google Maps and use Street View to deepen your understanding of the area. You'd be amazed at how accurate an idea you can build up just by using these tools. Of course, you'll also want to talk to local estate agents, letting agents, or fellow local investors, because they'll always know things that you can't learn from looking at the map or even just making a visit or two yourself. So now you've nailed down your budget and picked your location. You're ready to buy, right? Not so fast. There's something else to consider that may not have occurred to you. Do you want to buy as a company or as an individual? Buying as an individual means less paperwork and it makes it easier to extract your profits to spend personally. But it will lock you out of certain tax benefits, so you might end up paying a lot more income tax at the end of the year. Alternatively, buying as a company is a common choice if you want to let profits roll up for future purchases. But it does require more administrative work, causes some complexity around mortgages, and so on. So what's the right choice? Well, we've got a video that breaks down the specific pros and cons between the two options, and you will want to get this right before you buy, because changing structure later is very expensive. But whichever choice you go with, you'll need to set up step 5. As we established earlier in the video, you're probably trying to buy a property that is over your actual cash budget. That is, say, £300,000, not £100,000. So you'll need to ask the bank for some money. But the bank doesn't always want to lend you what you ask for. It depends on two things. First, there's you. Are you an expat? Do you rent your home? Have you had any late payments that impacted your credit rating? Secondly, there's the property you want to buy. Is it of non-standard construction? Is it in a high-rise or above a shop? Do you plan to rent it out by the room or set it up as a holiday let? If you say no to all of that, then great. You're the dream borrower and there shouldn't be any problem getting the mortgage you want. But if you said yes to any of those, then your lending options might be more limited. It can be trickier to navigate, but definitely not impossible. So speak to a mortgage advisor before you go any further to find out what your options are. So finally, after 5 steps, you are ready to buy. But how do you go about finding the right property? Think of it like dating. In general, you don't expect to marry the first person you go on a date with. 99% of people are probably going to end up seeing several people before they find the one. And it's the same with property. It's very unlikely you're going to find the perfect opportunity right away. But how do you actually get started? Well, the most common method is to just do it yourself and work through the process. Browse listings on a site like Rightmove, create a list of favourites, do the viewings, and if any of them meet your criteria, make an offer to the agent. It puts you in the driver's seat, but it can also take you hours of legwork, hours that you might not have. We bought £100 million worth of property last year, and we reject 97% of the opportunities we see. So if you're viewing any less than 10 properties to secure one, you're probably not being selective enough. That's why some busy people go for the second method, which is to use a third party who will do the sourcing for you, which, yes, we do, but you'll find other companies and individuals who offer a similar service too. So for our clients, we do the filtering, the site visits, the surveys, and the negotiation, securing a discount by buying in bulk, and then passing it on as a done deal. But even when you outsource in this way, there's still work to be done. You need to do research on their research. Make sure what's being presented is as good as it sounds. Check it matches your strategy, and get confident that they're not missing anything that would put you off. All in all, don't settle. Just like you wouldn't settle with a partner you don't actually love. Hopefully. And don't be disappointed if the first few viewings or opportunities that are presented to you don't go as expected. Just look at it as an experience that'll help you find out more about what you actually want. One thing that investors often underestimated is the time that it will take them to go from A to Z. And I often speak to first-time investors who have really unrealistic expectations. They set themselves goals like, I want to buy my first property in the next 3 months, which is possible. But in my experience, if you try and do this from the position of, I haven't thought about it at all yet, you're really setting yourself up for failure because there's a lot to do and you're probably putting too much unrealistic pressure on yourself. At the very least, you'll end up rushing through the process and you might not do as good a deal as you otherwise could. So my advice would be to give yourself a full 12 months to secure your first property. Take each of these steps, map them out, assign deadlines to each, and you will be able to get there. It'll take the pressure off, it'll make it more enjoyable and ultimately more successful. But there's one skill you should always be honing in the background, starting right now, if you really want to get into property and make some money, which is deal analysis. Because you'll be looking at a lot of deals, and even if you work with external companies, you still need to be able to challenge their analysis. Otherwise, you could be exposed to bad advice or even outright scams. So watch this video next, where we lay out our end-to-end system for analysing property deals in full.